Again, thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate the little community we've built that are tuning in each week for the developer blogs. This, I believe, is, as always, we're never quite sure, 23 or 24 dev blogs in, and today we're going to be joined by Jamie, who is, I guess, the lead of the multiplayer, and Dana, and he's going to be giving us all some information, I guess, about Operation 4 and all about balance and mechanics, as that is his expertise. I've been introducing ice into the equation quite recently, and it's quite game changing. I never normally have ice with my drinks, it's just kind of overbearing, but honestly, it's really quite refreshing. Again, for tuning in, this is Editor Z here, just remembering to remind you about all of the ways to support me, all of the sort of monthly content goals. They go back into the channel. Most recently, I'm trying to buy a new processor so I can render videos a bit faster, stream at a bit better quality for you, maybe even stream live on YouTube at a bit better quality. Check out the links in the description. There are ways to just PayPal, like a coffee or a Twitch sub, or just a dono if you want it to pop up on stream, etc. All of these things help massively in order to keep me motivated and keep doing what I'm doing. So truly, all of the new members that have joined the YouTube page, the loyal Zacarios over on the Twitch page, the people in the community Discord chatting away, you all help massively, as well as the commenters. So I really would appreciate if you're considering, and you've got some spare change that you normally just buy a pizza with, hey, if you could support me, that would be fantastic. We've had an annoying start to this day. Effectively, I tried to branch out and make a different type of video with that esports video, and people seem to enjoy the esports video, so I thought I'd make another. Now, this featured one of the funniest moments, I think, that's happened in television I don't want to oversell it. It was an amusing moment in television, for British television, and I wanted to break it down and explain to you, the viewer, why it was funny. So kind of how the situation came about, what's the show about, what would you call it, copyright free, transformative, fair use, and no problems. The last 30 seconds got copyrighted, and I counterclaimed it because honestly I truly believe the video is entirely transformative. The last 30 seconds of that video would really make no sense without my 9 minutes 30 explanation beforehand and leading up to that moment. And then today they basically said, nope, you're wrong, and they copyright striked my channel. So I don't know where we're going. I don't know if I'm going to be uploading during the 90 days, but the problem is 90 days is such a long time. That's the entirety of Operation 4. So I know most people are sat here thinking, mate, just get on with the devblog, but we live in 2020 and there are timestamps. So if you want to just stop me speaking at any moment and get into the devblog, you can do that. But for those that are sticking with me, I appreciate that. It's a completely transformative video. It was never made public because I wanted to double check with you guys if it was okay. It's never had any views. It's not like I posted it online to get a load of views and abuse your copyright system for my own gain. I never even uploaded it online. You, the viewer at home, has never seen it. And it's just a shame that once the copyright strike was actually applied and I got it, then I got an email address and now I'm allowed to respond to them. So it says, okay, you can talk to the claimant. So I emailed them. What message did I get? Oh, due to the COVID-19, I'm not answering any emails. Interjecting myself here. This is Editor Z, busy editing away. I actually had I found an email address and I managed to contact them, who then sent me to another contact, who sent me to another contact, and I sent a big long email about the whole copyright thing. A person called James, won't say his last name, emailed me and said, they're sorry that the strike was quite a heavy-handed approach, applying a broad stroke, and they were just wanting to protect their digital platforms. After an email back and forth, he said that if I agree to never show the clips, and I basically do a couple of things which might take me like a day or two, they can retract the claim and I'll be able to upload. Alright, Editor Z number 2, different day. Yeah, basically, I'm just waiting. That's all I can do. I'm just waiting for an email and a retraction. I can technically now upload for a few other reasons, but I have to sort of limit my uploads. So the devblog's a pretty important video, so I'll post this one. But if there are a few less videos on the channel, hopefully there won't be, but if there are, you know why. I'm trying to fix it. I'm a small, tiny channel in a corporate world, I'm not really been listened to, so I'm just at the mercy of emails and people. So I can't do anything more. I'm not going to stress about it. I've tried my best. Here's the dev blog.
Not just myself. So thanks everyone for coming, and Jamie, thank you for stopping by today.
My pleasure. Good to be back. Good to be back, rather.
Yeah, excellent. So for those of you who don't know, you are the lead gameplay developer on Gears of War. And what that means is you're responsible for movement, for weapon balancing, weapon tuning, all of this kind of stuff, and a little bit more. So you're a very popular man. Lots of questions I get on this. Whenever we have anybody else on the stream, a lot of questions I get that I'm like, just wait. Like, we could probably have you on every other week and just answer a bunch of questions. So I think people are super excited to have you here. I know I'm personally very excited that you're going to be here, just because then it makes it easier for you to answer questions that I normally have to answer. And with that always lingering bit of anxiety that I have that I may have said something wrong. Anyway, I know last week we teased about there being a PVE change coming to the game. This week, we went into QA, and QA found a bug that they weren't able to resolve, and they're looking into it right now. So I don't want to, like, we're optimistic for next week, but don't, like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We're working on it. The team is aware. It is something that we want to do. It's not a huge change. It's just a little bit of a quality of life adjustment that we think you guys are going to like as we're preparing and really getting us better, or getting us setting the stage for Op4. Amy, big thing happened today. We dropped the new developer playlist.
Well, there's a number of reasons why, but the most sort of one that floats to the surface is basically that it allows us to work a little bit more with the community, specifically to let everyone know and experience where we're thinking of taking the game, from a tuning standpoint, from a mode standpoint. Any sort of new major PvP content has the opportunity to sort of come through this playlist, so that community can help drive how these things actually get introduced to the game formally in a future sort of TU. And this is the first sort of step towards a much bigger plan for this list.
We've got a couple of weapon tuning changes that we're exploring, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But I know that you've got a bit of a list. You know, we've got some movement stuff we want to look through. I know that Jonathan Taylor, who is the gameplay designer, or not the gameplay, the level designer lead. I'm not even sure I actually have his title right.
he's the game mode lead. He's the
game mode designer. That's where we are. Thank you. I know that he's got a few tweaks that he's looking at to a few modes. And, you know, we never know. We could even be testing out modes that we haven't done yet that might start as a feature mode or then move into a fully fledged mode if we wanted to go and do something. So there's a lot of potential inside of this list to do iterative things like what we're working on right now when it comes to weapon tuning, to more substantive things around how a mode would play. There was talk of whether we could do it with maps that we're working on. That may not happen for a very long time based on how that would roll out. So I don't want to say maps would be part of this process, but, you know, bigger things could come into that as well. So specifically today, we're testing out two things: Adhesion, aim assist for the way most people talk about it, and how we've changed the active reloads for the loadout weapons specifically. Let's talk about the adhesion change. What does that mean? What weapons does it impact? You know, what are we looking for inside of that?
So right off the top, adhesion is one of the three aim assist sort of features that almost every shooter that's in existence, that's a console shooter, utilizes to some degree. So adhesion, friction, and magnetism. Gears has always had friction and magnetism since day one, and in various forms. And certainly 2, 3, and 4 all had the same systems in place. But we added one called adhesion to 5. I think most people are aware of what that actually means, but basically it just allows console players, specifically controller users, to be able to get a little bit of help when they're aiming at and moving with the target. A valid target, that is, so an enemy that's downrange within a certain range of your crosshair. This is a really big help for a wide swath of players, and it's it's big in the campaign, it's big in PVE, but PvP it causes in a not insignificant number of players, it causes what feels like the crosshair to be bumped around out of players' control. So we've done a lot of sort of soul searching about this, and overall, this feature is a boon for majority of players in this game. But when it comes to PvP, it is something that is not necessarily, at least with the player base that's there, it's not helping as much as we would have hoped. Potentially, it's hindering a bit more. So all we're simply doing is disabling that. A lot of philosophical change as far as some of the accessibility stuff we were doing with Gears 5. And it is largely being introduced to the dev playlist specifically because it is such a big deal. And we're trying to get feedback for do people actually notice that it's gone? If so, like how much of an improvement is it? Or if you really do miss it, why do you miss it?
Okay, so the other change we did was the active reload change. Now, given my skill level is more on the not good level versus the other one, I actually noticed the active change more than I noticed the aim assist change. It felt fast. Not just because it was closer, but the speed at which it moved felt faster. Am I crazy or is that right?
So one of the changes we did for this was to, and this is actually based on a lot of number of internal testing we've done. When the perfect active zone, which is the white zone what was historically for Gears 5 in the middle of the gray zone, which is the regular active zone, then we decided to shift that forward to the front end of the gray zone. We did this specifically to offer a bit more of a kind of an intense engagement experience with it. One of the reasons why we moved everything to the middle was that there was no real fail condition for getting an active if you failed to get the perfect active, you were almost always still landed within one of the gray areas either before or after. And the majority of the weapons still have that sort of philosophy, but for the loadout weapons in particular, because we're removing the reward, the damage reward, we're making it a bit more of a skill-based thing to land and get that special sort of faster reload. You'll notice that the bar that sweeps across moves like it did in previous Gears games as well, which is another change we're sort of testing out, which means that it sort of eases into the movement and feels like it speeds up, and then once it gets to the active zone, it sort of slows down again and gives you the chance to hit it. Then it speeds up for the rest.
Right, let me think about this. We have a new playlist that is going to implement changes into the game that they think they may do or may not do, and it's a testing zone. That sounds brilliant. I can only say that sounds like a good thing. I guess what this leads me to immediately, though, is I always think of Gears of War 3 and that Zeta playlist. For those that don't remember, this was a playlist where we had testing and different testing for the game, and you could go into that game mode and you could try like movement speed, shotgun speed, damage, boom shot changes, all this stuff, right? And for the first few weeks, it was really, really good. But then it got to a point where the devs, and again, pure speculation, this is nothing to do with Gears 5, the devs of Gears 3 really stopped updating it. Maybe they just weren't getting enough feedback. Maybe there just wasn't enough players in the game, because it is an issue where there's like a drop-off, so people will play the playlist, and then the second the playlist isn't full, and the only option is to play with bots, people will be like, actually, I don't really want to play that game mode, I just want to play some people. And it dwindles out very quickly unless it's kept updated. So my number one thing would be, I really do hope it's kept updated, and kept updated in the client with like, hello everyone, boom, when you sign in, there's new changes in the game that we're thinking about putting into PvP. Hop in, play a game or two of the new playlist and get some extra XP, get some scrap, There needs to be a driving force to get people into that playlist, because there obviously will be people like myself and others that play it, but to get people to stick in it and properly test it, because obviously it's difficult to properly test something If the matches aren't balanced or the matches aren't full or sweaty, it's difficult to actually tell if it's making a difference. So hopefully there's a constant cycle of updates and a way to drive people to that, because my initial impression is, oh, what happens if there's like no players? My second thought, and this is coming from Reddit, is that we've had the active change, and with what they've spoke about is the magnetism change. There's two ways you can think about this. They're either holding back stuff because stuff has already gone into Operation 4. In that case, it's kind of pointless us testing it because it's already going into Operation 4. Or they're going to let us test it and it's just coming out slower, and they don't want to put 50 changes in the playlist, which would be a smart thing to do. Don't put all of the changes in the playlist because we need to figure out what's good and what's bad. And I would say 2 changes is a good thing. We can now look at the magnetism and the adhesion, the adhesion to be specific. We can now look at that and the active, and then we can figure out what is worse, what is good, what is bad. If you put 10 different changes in there, it's going to be difficult to pinpoint what exactly is the issue or the good thing. So for me, what I would love to see in this developer playlist is the 4.11 Gib range. I think the Gib range is still massive. I actually spoke to an old friend that we used to play Xbox with many, many years ago. Would have been 10 years ago plus. And he played Gears 5 for the first time, and he came into my stream and he was like, I've done some big one-shots in Gears 1, but I'm just seem to be one-shotting everybody on Gears 5. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the game right now. So I would love them to test the Gib range, but, let's do baby steps first. Let's have a look at these 2 changes. My initial thinking is this, right? The active reload is faster, and it's like the old bar where it would be slow, fast, slow. Right, that's how it used to active. Here's my thinking. That is my immediate thing is that is a buff, because you can now active reload your Lancer faster, and it still has all of the damage values on it, so in a way that's a buff to the Lancer. Well, actually, Z, it's not a buff to the Lancer, because there is no damage buff. Can you listen to Jamie? Can you take the information in? There's no damage buff, it's gone. So yes, the active reload is quicker, Z, but there's no damage buff. So what Z would like to say is he thinks the Lancer change after playing a game or 2 feels quite nice. That's what he's trying to say, but what he's actually saying is, oh, I'm not sure if this is a buff or not, because there's a lot of damage on the Lancer and you can reload fast, but actually there is no damage on the Lancer after playing it. You don't have to shoot bullets to get the active reload, so even if you fail it, you can just have another go at the active, if that's how I'm understanding it, or if it's gone back to the old Gears of War system, because obviously I haven't played this playlist yet, that would be great. I don't like the idea of just not wasting ammo to get an active and just being able to sit in a oppressive stronghold position and relentlessly fire off actives. I don't like that. No, but as we've seen, basically there is no active damage boost. So even if you're sat relentlessly spamming for an active reload, well, there's no point doing it, is there? Because you don't get any bonus from it. The only thing I would say is I hope the dev playlist is what I would call a hot fix. You can push an update to it without an update. Because obviously if they thought to themselves we want to change the Gib range, hopefully they can just tweak a value with a hotfix, rather than going, okay, you want us to test the Gib range out, we're going to have to do that update. And if we're doing an update, we may as well wait for the next title update, and everything gets dragged back. So I just hope this playlist is what I would call like hotfixable.
This list is dynamic. We don't expect to be making changes, but we also want to be responsive to to what the feedback is from the community.
Dynamic updating playlist, he says it is. And the reason I ask that is there's not much point doing a dev playlist if it's not constantly tweaked. Because what's going to happen is this. Let's say they do the active reload and everyone goes, oh, I hate this new active reload. They then have some feedback, right? They hate the active reload for this reason. They check the forums, they see, why is that? And then they go on to say, okay, we'll collect that feedback. We understand they don't like the active. Let's change it. If they then don't put the change into the dev playlist, we're kind of in a situation they're getting some more feedback, but the end result is still them doing the change and us not seeing it. Does that make sense? You know, we're getting into a situation where they get the feedback, they know it's bad, but ultimately the end result is just TC putting something in an update, into a title update, into an operation, and then we just get given it. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully the developer playlist gets continually updated, otherwise the whole thing is a bit pointless, because really it ends up just being a one-time thing where they just put something in, we tell them if it's good or bad, and then they listen to that feedback and then change it for an operation. What I would love to see is a continual, hot fixable, updatable playlist where things are changed dynamically, and people can go, oh, on Tuesday they're trying out this Gib range, on Wednesday, or you know, the next week they're trying out this Lancer damage, on next Wednesday they're trying out this Lancer damage, rather than just putting a new Lancer damage into the playlist, us saying yes or no, and then that getting shelved and never updated for the rest of the operation until boom, a new update, a new Lancer value is put into the new title update, new operation, and then we're like, oh, we don't like this one either. We could have told you that if that had gone into the dev playlist. So my whole thing is, I just hope it's active and updated.
Intention is making sure that keeping a close eye on how the Lance and the Snub work, to make sure that they are sort of people responding to it the way we hope, which is that it improves the balance of the game, with especially when the people are fighting with the weapons they are fighting with, you know, sort of 90% of the time, 80% of the time, and it's really important that those feel consistent, and the skillful usage of those weapons is what shines, rather than the I just happen to have active reload bullets and you didn't, and therefore I got rewarded and you didn't. So that really comes down to just making sure you can aim, making sure you can hit your shots, making sure you can get your headshots, and track your target now because you don't have adhesion. All these things are going to make these core weapons much more receptive to the skillful play that players are looking for.
Devs there are stood there in front of you, sat there in front of you saying, we understand, we want the game to be difficult, to be hard to play, to be skilled, and completely agree, and I like that. I can't say anything other than that's great to hear. Again, I always have to give it the opposite view and have to be fair and balanced when I do these little reviews, is I still have to say the question, why spend all of this time balancing the game just to then have a big Gib range on basically the core gun that for 90% of all kills is going to be used, the shotgun. The big Gib range just completely nullifies any sort of, you can't strafe because people can wobble into big Gib range. You can't really wait and predict where somebody's going to land because boom, they touch the wall, they up air you across the map. The Gib range is really hindering and is, I would say, hiding the skilled work that the devs are putting in. People will laugh and say the game's not skilled. It is a very difficult game to play, Gears of War. And if anybody's ever played Gears of War, you'll know that it's a tough game to play. You put your friend that's an average console shooter, and you put him on Call of Duty, and then you move him from Call of Duty to Battlefield. They're going to get the few odd kills. You move a Call of Duty player that's never played Gears of War to Gears, they're lost. It is a difficult game to play. And I think what's happening is that big Gib range is allowing some users to probably get kills that they shouldn't, and that's not always a bad thing, you know. It's kind of like that age-old thing that Lee Perry said. You know, I remember Lee Perry said this in like 2008. He said Gears of War is at its best where you play your little brother 100 times and you beat him 99 times, and one time he manages to kill you because maybe he got a boom shot. Maybe he stuck a torque bow on the floor, you know, maybe he frag tagged you or threw some nades at you, you know, but 99 other times, you're beating him. Whereas now, it kind of feels like it's 80-20, 70-30, you know, that sometimes this other player that you just know is nowhere near your level is just happened to catch you out due to this massive Gib range or all these other little things. And it's great to see that the devs are trying to tweak it and make the game more skilled, absolutely. I'm just worried that it's all hidden under this fast up A move speed, under this big Gib range, under this really, really quick movement, and the gameplay that they're trying to refine and work on is always going to be hidden by those mechanics. I'd really like them to touch on the speed, the wall cancelling, and the Gib range. I'm not saying make the game like Gears 1. Everyone tells me, oh, you think Gears 1's perfect, you should make it like Gears 1. Gears of War 1 had so many problems. Gears of War 2 did, Gears of War 3 did, right? There's a balance to be found. If you want to keep the wall cancel, I'm not a dictator. We can keep the wall cancel. We just got to make it so I've got to be able to predict something, so it's not a complete guessing game. You know, there's got to be a balance. And I think the big Gib range on top of the wall cancel is causing a large problem.
The Omen, is it ever going to change for Gears 5?
No. Essentially, the classic Omen is not going to come back. It's not on our list of things to bring back right now. We understand why people want to bring it back, and there's a lot of sort of legacy, sort of nostalgia approach to it. And whatever your reasons, you know, we don't just offhandedly discount them. But the amount of work to get it in is just too much. You know, it would cause us to sacrifice too many other really good updates and changes and quality of life things that we're looking at doing. So it's just not on the cards right now.
All right, so the Omen is never coming back. My quick comment is, all right, if the Omen's never coming back, that obviously sucks. I wish it would come back. It's not for nostalgia, though. I just can't stand seeing my entire screen full red. You go to edit a montage and you look back at your footage, you'll be like, wow, my screen is just permanently red the whole time. Yes, there is the simplified Omen, but it's still very, very red. Can we just remove the outer screen redness and just have it fill in the regular Omen a little bit? I don't know. It's not a nostalgia thing. I just genuinely think the new Omen sucks. I've got used to it. I can live with it. Like, if the devs are saying it's either the new Omen or maps or content, listen, I'll stick with the new Omen, you know? I'm not asking for perfection. It's a video game. I just play it for a couple of hours and then turn it off. Like, I don't need complete perfection.
Just to go back to the Gnasher for a second, and I think this is actually telling the way people see the Gnasher, as I've seen half the chat is saying nerf it, and the other half is saying increase the Gib range. So to me, it feels like if we get roughly half of each person saying that the other person is wrong, then we're in that spot that makes about sense, because the thing with the Gnasher in Gears is it's changed pretty much with every game. So as long as we've got not one side is complaining that we're getting a bit of feedback, is that balanced?
Can I interject? Because this is a really interesting point. So Dana said that if 50% of the people want a bigger Gib range and 50% of the people want a smaller Gib range, that's perfect, because we're probably in the right spot. But the way I see that, and maybe I'm just not understanding it from their point, the way I see that is 50% of people are unhappy that it's too big, and 50% of people are unhappy that it's too small. So nobody's happy. So by trying to accommodate and settle in this middle ground, nobody's happy. That's what I've been saying for a long time, and we kind of heard it there from Dana. I understand what he's saying. What he's trying to say is, if a load of people think it's too big and a load of people think it's too small, we're probably in around about the right ballpark, you know? But the way I see it is half people not happy, half people not happy, 100% of people not happy. I think Gears of War is best when it sticks with a style and says, listen, this is what we're doing. Big Gib range, small Gib range. And we've got into this area, I feel like, where it's this middle ground wishy-washy game where nobody's really happy. But here we have TC saying that's the perfect spot. So you can let me know in the comments, what do you think about that? Is it in the perfect spot, or is it nobody's happy, or how do you interpret that? Because that's the way I interpret that. I think nobody's really enjoying it totally, but they seem to be happy with that. So we'll see what Jamie says.
I mean, let's just say it's what we sort of strive for as far as the, like, with a divisive weapon like the Gnasher. It's always been this way, always will be this way. If we can get that 50, it's close to 50% of people who love it and people who don't love it, then yeah, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
It's a weird thing to aspire to, but the Gnasher is such a unique one. It is a bit tricky.
It is very tricky.
I like everyone's like, play the game. The range is unacceptable. Nunez, we played the game. It is something that like they're literally looking at the chat and
I've got to be honest, right? It does bug me. Is when I've got to be honest, right? I like Dana, great spokesperson, says it how it is, but sometimes I do feel like when someone in the chat says the range is too big, and he says, "Listen, I play the game. It's not, but 2 seconds before that, he was admitting that he's a silver player that has no idea about the game. So which one is it? Maybe he's trying to say that the team play the game and we're all high level and we all know what we're talking about, so don't worry about it. But what it comes across is like, bro, I play the game, it's fine. But 2 seconds before, he was saying he was silver. The Gib range is fine. That's what I'm trying to tell you, right? Listen to this statement. The Gib range is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just think it could be better, because what I believe is, yes, the Gib range is fine. It's not so big that you're blowing people absolutely across the map, and it's not so small that the gameplay is annoying. Maybe it is in a good spot, but I think it could be in a better spot, because I feel like the ever so slightly too big Gib range is hiding the mechanics that the devs right now are trying to tweak and improve the movement. Like, if you improve all of the movement, you improve the adhesion, the magnetism, the tracking, the actives, but you've still got a slightly big Gib range, all of that doesn't matter, because you can't strafe, you can't dance, you can't poke, you can't do any of these things that they're trying to tweak and spending all of their time tweaking, because the end result is just bang, one shot Gib and you're dead. So that's what I feel like. I feel like this is kind of the crux of the issue, that TC believe if something's 50% hate it and the other 50% hate it, then it's in a perfect spot. Whereas I feel like it ends up in a wishy-washy game that nobody really enjoys, and they should really go with a style. And I think the best style is a slightly smaller Gib range, because it promotes and highlights and shows all of the things the devs are working on. I just can't imagine, like, with this level of Gib, even if you tweak the movement and stuff, that suddenly strafing or whatever they're planning is going to come back. It's still going to be a one-shot fest, chaining one-shots. That's what the game is. So it does bug me. It does bug me, that answer, because it's just me thinking to myself, there's really no point. There's really no point me campaigning, I guess, because that's kind of the way it is. So you heard it here first. If everything's bad, it's good, and if they're working on everything, it just feels like the work they're spending a lot of time on is going to be hidden by the Gib range, and I don't think they see it. The 4.11 was so good.
Fair.
It is, and yeah, so that leads us to the next thing, which is what we are doing to address this is without the prediction, we still want to make sure that the position of essentially the person who you're shooting at, if you're behind cover, typically you have a sort of you're in low cover, you're aiming over top of it, a guy's sliding towards you. The body position that they're in when they're sliding is the low center of gravity that's really far back. So their legs are typically look like they're across that jib line, while their actual center of mass is not. So what we're doing is we're adding multiple checks on the hit zone, essentially the central mass, that are looking for one of three positions, like the top of that position, the middle of that position, and the bottom of that position, which means that if any of those ones are across the line, so if the person is angled as they're sliding into cover towards that cover, then normally we would check the middle. And if the line's right there, then they won't have gotten the jib, because that they're on the opposite side of the line. But now that we'll be checking the bottom as well, it means that will be across the line. And if one or all three of those positions is across the jib line, then you will be rewarded with jib. So essentially, boiling it all down, it just means that body position is less of a factor in getting the expected result now.
Okay, good. So thank you. That clears everything else.
The way I see it is the game's too fast, and the game's way too fast. So we're now adding extra checks into the game to try and constantly check where somebody is, because everyone's so damn fast, where it would just be easier if we just slowed everything down just a touch. But if they want to keep the speed and add more checks, that also sounds good. I think a Gears of War player doesn't really mind the balance. They just want to feel rewarded with their skill, and they want to feel you want to be consistent, right? You don't want to sign in one day and feel like you're not getting the kills you were getting the other day. They just want consistency.
In no particular order, would you consider adding?
All right, so what I'll do now is I will do the quick fire question and answers, and if I've got anything particular to say, I'll interject my opinion. If not, I'll just keep it fast and keep it flowing, and we'll let the questions roll.
The feeling is that precision rifles with keyboard and mouse are way more accurate, so that if I'm playing like OSOC, even though it's just it's not a ranked mode or anything like that, if I'm playing against a PC player, I have a legitimate disadvantage as a controller player.
So you're specifically talking about the mouse, effectively. So we did look at this. We have looked at this in the past. It is something that we can certainly do, but it wouldn't be across the game as well necessarily. Like I said, even if it's for private matches potentially, but it's not. It wouldn't be high on the list right now. There's a lot of stuff to consider. It's not just accuracy; it's also how you can actually control recoil and all that kind of stuff too. There's a lot of sort of the various gameplay axes that we have would have to be considered, and actually getting something that would be objectively comparable to a controller person, a high skill controller person versus a low skill controller person is a really difficult and fairly subjective thing, actually. So yes, it could be done, but again, it wouldn't be very high on the priority list of things to do for this game at this time.
For sure. No, and I think we should talk a little bit about that. A lot of the stuff that we're being asked about isn't something that we haven't thought of or heard of. Everyone in the studio has a list of priorities. Obviously, your list is focused around gameplay and movement and such. Other people's lists are around whether it's PVE tuning or modes or whatever it is. So, and that list is basically based around how can we deliver the biggest impact to the largest group of people.
You can't rebalance every single gun and every single balance value for a PC to then make it equal to a controller, because if you then say nerfed my Lancer damage by 50%, but then I bumped into a controller player that could be as accurate as I was on a PC, and he's doing double my damage because he's doing full damage, I'm doing 50%. It can't be. I mean, Toby Campbell here saying, oh, mouse and keyboard is not on the priority, gotcha, as in you don't give a shit about us. The reality is they don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. It makes complete sense. Gears of War is a third-person console shooter, and it happens to be on PC currently, and the PC population isn't big enough for them to merit an entire rebalance of the game and an entire playlist for the, and I'm okay with that. That makes sense. I think that a high-skilled controller player is on a pretty level playing field with the average Joe that plays on the computer, and most of the people that play on the PC use a controller anyway, so then it would become input-based matchmaking. You know, what would you do if I'm on a PC but I've plugged a controller in and all of a sudden my guns have got more recoil, double the recoil, half the damage values, and now I'm on a controller on my PC and I'm getting absolutely shafted? Where does it you have to create such a big amount of systems and checks in places for really something that isn't really too much of an option. If you despise playing against PC people, you can turn crossplay off. If you think it's okay, you can keep it on. For me, yes, a world-class PC player is going to beat a console player, but a world-class controller player is going to beat most of the PC people. It's one of the most balanced games in terms of crossplay, I believe, that I've ever played, because movement is so important. You know, cover, knowledge of the game. It's not just a point and click shooter like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike where a mouse is always going to be the better option. There are certain situations where a controller is more beneficial. I'm not saying a PC doesn't have an advantage, and I'm not saying a controller doesn't have an advantage in certain situations. I'm just saying, as a video game, the way it currently is, it's a pretty relatively balanced thing in the grand scheme of things, and I think most would agree. Like, yeah, I'm going to be better at lancering you down, but you've probably got a little bit better movement, you've got a little bit more adhesion, whatever it may be. It's fairly balanced. Is it perfect? No. Is any crossplay game going to be perfect? No, but it's pretty good.
Trickier. Cool.
Yep.
Next question. Torque bow. Why has it been changed to become now almost an insta-charge and insta-projectile weapon?
The timing of the recharge hasn't changed from 3 and 4, from 4 to 5. Well, we did change something in 4, which made it so when it is at a full charge, it becomes an instant hit weapon rather than a really, really, really fast projectile weapon. This change was done for a number of reasons. What it mainly comes down to is consistency and optimization. Having a having a projectile that has to be calculated, that has gravity and all these things, but is moving at a ridiculously high rate, is actually a pretty big burden on the game, the CPU, the server, all that sort of stuff. And there's virtually no difference from when you're looking at it from a realistic standpoint of what appears to be instant hit, because it moves so fast, with actual instant hit. So we made that change in Gears 4, and it does make the weapon more consistent. It does make the weapon maybe feel a little more powerful because it is more consistent. But we never intended to make it more powerful, specifically from that standpoint. What is different from 4 to 5 is that the explosion of a stuck projectile is bigger and is more powerful.
I'll answer this question purely for Stotty. I'll keep it in there because Stotty's always moaning at the torque bow. I really don't have much of a problem with the torque bow. Do I think it charges up instantaneously and you can't get away from it? Yes. I do believe it is faster to stick somebody than, say, a Gears 1 or 2. 3, 4 and 5, I don't know, but it's always been potent since Gears 3. The splash damage means you don't even have to stick people anymore. You can just fire it at the floor. That feels a little bit cheap, but it does make you think about where you're sitting if someone's got a torque bow. I'm okay with a torque bow. There are probably bigger issues in the game to fix than the torque bow. The only thing I liked is the teardropping, which would be where you'd shoot it and it would teardrop down. He's basically saying the reason they removed all of that was to constantly calculate the gravity and all of the projections and all of the calculations of where the bullet's traveling, the speed, etc, etc. It was a burden on the CPU, and they're pushing this game pretty hard to look as good as it does on an older console. So effectively, console people, the reason we can't teardrop is because your CPU's shit. So thanks for that. Hopefully with the Xbox Series X, we can get some teardropping back, right?
Actually, this is sort of a philosophical question. And we talked about this last time you were on, about kind of reworking some of the foundational aspects of the game and then moving forward. What is, like, when we come out and say something like balance the game, or making the game more balanced, or balancing the weapons. Now, obviously, people intuitively know what that means, so that it's a bit of a chess move where one counters the other and so on and so forth. How does that impact your design process? What does that mean to you when someone talks about balance changes and tuning and that?
All right, so before he answers, I'll say my opinion on what I think balance is. For me, I think balance is, like Dana says, there's lots of different counters, there's certain positions that are stronger and weaker than others, and overall, it feels like you always have a play in your back pocket as to what you should and could do, or could have done, or what you should have done 2 minutes ago to stop that situation happening. As in, if somebody gets you into a corner with a boom shot and you have no outplay potential, then your mistake came a couple minutes ago, giving up the boom shot, moving yourself into that situation once you knew the boom shot had been taken. And I think you should always feel a little bit of freedom on the map and always have that thing in the back of your mind of, I could have done something. When you're consistently faced with something and you're always asking yourself the question, what could I have done? And you're a decent player, then there's probably a problem with the balance if you're constantly finding yourself asking, what could I have done? There was nothing I could have done. Right? But what I think Gears has got into the problem of is they're constantly trying to balance everything so fairly that they've kind of forgotten what, like Dana says, philosophically, what they want the game to be. What do they want the game to be? I don't know. You know, I've played a lot of Gears 5 and I don't know what they want the game to be. Do they want it to be strafing or fast-paced action? Do they want it to be hit scan style torque bow weapons? Do they want it to be predominantly rifle or predominantly shotgun, or a balance between the two? Or I don't really know, and that's where I think there's a maybe not now, maybe before or wherever, somewhere down the line the Gears of War franchise lacked a leader that was like, okay, we know people want this stuff and we know some other people want this stuff, but actually we're going to go with them, or we're going to go with them, or we're going to go down a different road and we're going to stick with it. I don't particularly like Gears of War 2, but one thing you can say about Gears of War 2 is it kind of was in your face and it went, yo, it's slow. there's grenade tags, there's all of these different systems, and you're going to have to check some corners and you're going to have to play slow and think about how you push. And they stuck with that. Whether it was right or wrong, they stuck with their guns and they made a style of play. And I don't know what Gears 5 style of play is. So it'll be interesting to see what he says.
Talking philosophically, when you're doing a typical sort of shooter game in general, like just your average sort of game, that multiplayer shooter game, balance is simply just, looking at a particular item, a weapon, or ability, and comparing it against all the other ones that are there, making sure that, looking at the telemetry data you get for how often this weapon is being used successfully or unsuccessfully, and relative to the other ones, and et cetera. And you start to see a picture pretty clearly about the actual usage of a weapon versus what people are saying the usage of a weapon is causing. So there's that first change of like looking at actual data versus looking at like community callouts and stuff like that, and then trying to corroborate that evidence, as it were, as to whether this is actually something broken and needs to be done. But with Gears, there's the extra step of like basically looking at the balance, not just of what's happening in the current game and the current meta game, but everything before in the previous Gears and all the legacy as well. So balance isn't just simply like, the Gnasher's Gib Range is too far, and all of a sudden now we have to go and just make a small change there and we're done. It's like, well, no, we have almost well over a decade of previous versions of this weapon that have existed in many different forms and many different sort of love-hate relationships from the players, and we have to look at that and balance the actual intended change or the intended fix to the problem against what has been done in the past and what people expect for how they expect it to behave.
Mid-flow there, but that's what I think is what's happening. They are like Dana said before, with the 50% unhappy and the 50% happy. I feel like Jamie's saying, they can't just go in like any other developer and go, Gib Range is too big, boom, tweak the value, update it live, and it'd be done in like 30 seconds. They have to weigh up what that consequence would be and how all of the other players from all of the other generations would feel. And that must be a big struggle. But also, that's kind of their problem in itself, that really they should have a vision of what they believe the best thing for the game is, and they should be doing that. Like, they are the developers. I know you have to listen to the community, and it's not like a dictatorship, and it's really good that they listen to, people like me, other people in Twitch chat, everyone. But it's got to this point, I feel like, where they are trying to balance everything so equally that the overall feeling has gone. Like, if you try to balance the shotgun Gib Range for people from Gears 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Judgment, and all of the other Gears games that I'm probably forgetting, you're going to end up with, what are you going to end up with? A wishy-washy shotgun where some people are unhappy and some people are happy, and then they believe that's job done. Whereas I feel like what they should do, and I know it sounds bad, but they should go, all right, you lot, sorry, but this is how we think the shotgun should be, even if it was against me, even if they said, listen, Z, shut up, this is the Gib Range, this is how we want the game to be, adapt to it, or move on, basically. I think Gears of War needs a proper style, a consistent style, and they do need to stop balancing against all the other old games. They just need to pick a style that they believe in and then balance everything else around that style, rather than checking against 1,500 other Gears games and a million people's opinion. Kind of like they check the statistics of, right, the Talon isn't been picked up enough, let's buff it. But maybe the Talon isn't been picked up enough because it's boring and it's got nothing to do with balance. I just think they need to pick a style and run with it, rather than trying to appease the Gears 4 fans, the Gears 3, 2, 1. They just need a style that feels like Gears of War, lots of shotgunning, lots of rifling, power weapons, cool maps, lots of blood, gore, lots of Gib Range, cool headshots, and then just pick a style and run with it, rather than trying to appease everybody and then nobody gets appeased. All I want from Gears of War, if you were to take away anything from this video, All I want from Gears of War is a graphically cool looking game, because that's what Gears of War is to me. It's always been at the top of the graphics chain. Cool graphics, third person, awesome maps, lots of gore, lots of blood, cool headshots, a decent amount of lancering, pistoling, that type of stuff, heavy shotgun play, and some cool power weapons, you know?
Gears 5 is the prime example of we've made some small changes here and there that actually have significant impact. The way the reload of the Gnasher works, adding adhesion, all these things that are objectively making the game better in multiple places, but there's always a small little change over there, butterfly effect, et cetera, where all of a sudden it makes a huge impact where we didn't intend it to in PvP in this case, in a lot of places. So it's just, there's a lot of things to consider, and in that at the best of times, and Gears in particular has a whole extra axis of consideration of what came before, and then not only that, but also what people liked from what came before. And there's a large split within this community between things like UE, between things like Gears 4, Gears 3, and more often than not, Judgment or Gears 2 every now and then. But ultimately, it's the pinnacle. The first one, the third one, what it previously was with Gears 4 and what it currently is with Gears 5. And that is a lot to consider. It's a very difficult thing to balance just from a sort of a quality perspective, as well as are we actually going to fix the problem perspective. So there's a lot to say that it's kind of hard.
Well, actually, let's talk about before we go. I'm going to end with this question for the movement stuff. The wall cancel. So, talking about legacy players, obviously the wall cancel has become a newer thing inside of Gears of War, in modern Gears of War. The question is around, with that wall cancel, the predictability is being removed out of someone's movement. So I'm at a disadvantage when someone's pushing me because I don't really understand, or I don't have a consistent understanding of where they're going to be. What is your perspective around that? I know this is something you get asked a lot. You've dealt with this on the forums and a few things, so I just want to give you a chance to sort of give a more fulsome answer in this area.
Yeah, I mean, this is, as I say, a prime example of legacy balance versus sort of gameplay or fairness balance. This 100% stems from the choice we made to focus and in fact meet parity with Gears 3 rather than Gears 1. And that the simple answer is that's what we committed to, and that's what we built the game around. We certainly had conversations about looking at what we just did for Ultimate Edition, and ironically, we did bring a lot of the stuff that made things like the Gnasher work better in Gears 3 to the actual Ultimate Edition as well. So we made changes the inverse way. So we made it so improvements in Gears 3 we brought to Gears 1 effectively. Yeah. But one of the things that we just committed to is the fact that in its sort of heyday with as far as players interaction engagements, Gears was much more highly played and considered highly skillful when the cancel was put in place. And this is one of those divisive things. So I completely understand. I mean, I personally, as a game player, I prefer not being able to cancel as readily as you can right now. But that's my own personal opinion on it. But from an overall health perspective and a balance perspective, it is a really big change. And it's not, and I understand that that's what a lot of these people are calling for this change, because they feel it's going to make the game better. But it's not really that easy. It's not that binary, unfortunately. When you look at the high skill stuff aspect of the game, that's one aspect of it, and it's a really important area that we have to consider, just as much as it is for people at the sort of average or below average sort of skill expression level as well. And ultimately, when you are able to move more freely without restriction, or at least feel like you have control over these things, it creates a more engaging experience. Again, ironically, there's a lot of passion when playing a game like Gears, where you end up sort of yelling at either your controller or the TV or whatever the case may be. Then that's just the reality of the kind of game that we play, especially with an online competitive experience. That taking that away, then feeling like the player can't all of a sudden have this thing that they've been used to for a decade. That's a really big ask, and that's something that we're not prepared to do at this point effectively. So right now, it's not something we are looking to add or essentially remove.
The follow-up question I'm seeing in the chat is, it's the cancel combined with the increased speed that sort of came along as we moved into 4 and 5 specifically. So, and maybe this is sort of kind of like, let's kind of get into what are we thinking about movement changes, but let's start with, this is a leading question. I don't even know if he's thinking about movement changes. But like, what is your answer to the counter of the game is faster now, so the wall cancel actually plays a bigger role now than it did before?
Sure, and that's the problem is, like, you can look at it and sort of look at the feature or the mechanic of being able to cancel, and removing that's kind of like taking a hammer to a problem that needs a scalpel. So we know what the difference potentially is, and there is definitely an impact with game feel and sort of just general sort of skill experience with the faster acceleration. Because the movement speed is not faster, the acceleration is. And it is something that definitely has had a bit of a cascade impact on things like canceling, being able to, effectively, you're moving at the fastest the game allows you to move when you're sliding, and then all of a sudden you've stopped and changed directions really much faster than you did before. Before you had a bit more of that momentum, that more natural feeling momentum of, I was moving fast and now I'm stopping, but I can't immediately change the inflection of the stick and have my character actually go with me. Whereas when the change we did, we allow for that. So there is definitely a thing there that we have been looking at. We will continue to look at to see if that is actually a true hindrance to the overall sort of game we're looking to try and actually balance and build. So it's balancing, again, talking about the balance stuff of people want a faster movement speed, and this is now a consequence of that. So it's just a bit more of chasing this down to see if the acceleration is the right answer to the original problem of people looking to have a bit more control and a bit more responsiveness in their controls.
Yeah, so, it is interesting, right? Because it's so funny how like it is like that ball of thread. You pull on it and something else comes out, and so on and so forth. Because then we move into things like strafing and the role of strafing in a fight, and there's play styles, and there's the sensitivities and the speed, and then it becomes, and then this, and then there's what about this impact and what about that impact.
All right, so there we have the answer to the wall cancel. The answer is basically kind of what I've been thinking for a while, and the developer prefers no wall cancel, but he can't remove the wall cancel, just like Node 0 couldn't remove the wall cancel, because the community will not allow it. There's been 10 years of wall cancel, and the community just won't allow it. They will lose their mind that when they press A and go to a wall, they are going to have to commit to that wall because they made that choice. And they're going to have to live with the fact they slid to the wall, and if it was the wrong choice, they're going to get blown away by somebody hard aiming the cover because the guy predicted the slide. That is ultimately why we can't have the wall cancel removed. They can do it, they've spoke about it, they've thought about it. Node 0 thought about it and wanted to remove it. He chuckled when I spoke to him in my stream. Jamie said that he prefers no wall cancel, but basically they can't remove it just because there's too much legacy players that enjoy it. So okay, let's say they can't remove it. Maybe I have to give up and say, all right, we can't remove it, even though me, others, and even the developers want it removed effectively. He won't say it, but he wants it removed. It just creates a ton of problems. So, you could have the wall cancel from like a Gears 2 or a Gears 3 because I wasn't that annoyed by it. I got used to it eventually. Like he says, the problem then isn't so much the fact they're cancelling, it's the fact there's so much speed off the cancel, and then the Gib range and then the up A's and the reaction shots and all of this stuff with the no cancel make people feel like, wow, I've got so many cool plays I can do. But this is my entire point. The player doing all of the wall cancelling, doing all of the shooting, feels like they're in control and they're doing what they want to do, and that's because they are. The guy defending has no ability to actually read and counter the situation. An example is a guy climbed over a block and went for a mantle. The guy shot where he went to mantle. He predicted the mantle and shot. He cancelled out of his mantle and then reaction shotted him and ran off and shot at the same direction and ran backwards. Now the defender has no chance, because if he doesn't shoot or counter the mantle, he dies to the mantle. If he does shoot the mantle or he waits for the mantle, the guy cancels it and then obeys him. It's an incredibly attacker advantage favoured game, which is cool because people think they're doing a load of cool moves, but because quite often on Gears you get put on the back foot and you have to defend, it's a back and forth game where sometimes you're attacking, sometimes you're defending, especially in like King of the Hill and Execution and stuff, you know, the roles are constantly flipping. It gets frustrating and it gets tedious to play the game because half of the time you're attacking, half the time you're defending. So half the time you're defending, you're just at the mercy of the attacker. You hope they're not good enough to do all of the cancelling and do all of the moves, because if they are good enough, you can't do anything about it. And then it feels like, well, why do I bother playing the game if half of the time I'm at the mercy of the enemy team and I cannot do anything about it? That's my entire point. Is I understand that wall cancelling's fun to do. I do it as well. I understand there's loads of cool moves and there's loads of cool things you can do, and it feels fun to like choose a wall and decide, actually, oh no, someone's there, cancel out of it. It feels good. But the end result is the game becomes like stale, because you're just at the mercy of the enemy team basically. And that's my entire point. I understand why you like the wall cancel. I like it too, but I'm looking at it a different way. I'm saying the wall cancel's cool, I like it, but for the longevity of the franchise, it's really, really tedious to constantly be on the back foot for half of your playtime and have no way to counter it. The wall cancel, I'm saying it, I'm still saying it, I'm sticking to it. It needs to go. The wall cancel needs to go, and if it doesn't go, all the other moves should be slowed down and the momentum should be slowed down so I can predict it. But all I have seen today, in the right hand side of my screen, is the chat relentlessly saying two things: Gib range is too small and movement speed feels sluggish in Op 3. So like he says, he probably wants to remove it and do a load of things, but he can't because there's 10 years of legacy zoomers that want to hyper bounce zoom everywhere, and he can't change it. And that's why I feel like, that's when I feel like myself, that's when it's probably time to move on with a franchise, because I can put up with a franchise if the developers have the same ideas, and you can be like, all right, we both want to get rid of the wall cancel, let's have a back and forth and discuss how we do it. What's the correct way? What's the bad way? What's the good way? Have some back and forth, right? And I can help a developer envision their vision. But when the devs are like making a game that is just not for you, I'm not going to waste my time spending like 9 months trying to change a game into another game. Like, I wouldn't make Call of Duty videos and try and turn it into a third-person shooter. I'd be wasting my time. I might gain a small following and people might go, that's a cool idea, they should do this, but ultimately I'm not going to overpower an entire first-person COD community. The same way with this, I am not going to get the wall cancel removed. The only way the wall cancel would get removed is if everybody started vocalizing it and then it got put into a playlist. That's it. So that's what I'm saying. I can't do it on my own. If you really dislike the wall cancel, or you like the wall cancel but you're okay with other things being slowed down, you need to let them know, because it's not a one-man thing. So that's the way it is, really. I believe, well, Node Zero wanted to slow the game down, I think. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he wanted a more tactical approach to the game. Jamie here, he's not saying it, but he sort of is saying it, that the wall cancel, he prefers it without the wall cancel. And he understands that when you pick away, Dana says, at that ball of string, and this is why I'm always skeptical to give balance, because when I say something like, oh, I don't like the rifle power, they go, okay, we'll change the rifle power. But then I'm like, wait, it is a ball of string. If you change the rifle power, you're going to have to change this and change this and change that. That's why I say if you lower the Gib range a lot, you're going to have to change the rifle power, because if you don't change the rifle power, when I run head on at someone, I won't be able to get in gib range to blow them up. I will be downed just before I can get in gib range. So therefore, I can now, by lowering the gib range to enable shotgun battles, I can no longer push a Lancer player. So the Lancer needs to be tweaked. Right, if the Lancer's been tweaked, we need to do this. And that's what I'm saying, it's a ball of string. But what it feels like online, not just Gears of War, let me just breathe. What it feels like is when you begin these balance talks, the devs, not Gears people, I'm saying other devs, like devs will just hear something like, all right, the Lancer needs nerfing, let's nerf it. And I'm like, but wait. If you're going to do that, there's going to be a load of knock-on consequences. And if you're not going to deal with the knock-on consequences, don't alter it. Like now, I can live with the balance of the shotgun, but ideally I'd like a lower gib range. But if they lower the gib range, don't do it if you're not going to tweak the Lancer, because otherwise it'll mess everything up. It is a ball of string. So yeah, there we have the wall cancel answer. That basically, that's 2 devs now that have come out, confirmed, 2 devs that have come out and said they don't want the wall cancel, or they prefer the no cancel, to put it in a light way. But basically, they can't do it because there's 10 years of people that cannot physically handle that when they go to a wall, you've gone to that wall, and if I'm smart enough to think he might go to that wall and I predict it and then headshot you as you slam into the cover, the people can't live with it. They'll smash the controller and go, I want it to cancel. And it's been too long. It's been too... The wall cancel has been out of the franchise for too long that people won't understand what it gives. And what they'll do is they'll turn into the game, they'll tune into Gears 6, it'll have no wall cancel, and people just go, oh, this feels clunky, what have they done? And they'll move on. They're terrified of effectively alienating their current population. That's what's happening right now. They're terrified of alienating the current population by removing the wall cancel. But here's what I said in almost every dev blog. Like, what you need to do is effectively choose a style and like alienate some people for the growth of the game. Gears ain't going to be a big game the way it currently is. You can perfect this current style and it'll have its fans and it'll have its moments, and if you're okay with that being the multiplayer game that's semi-popular, it has a core fan base, that's cool. But if you want Gears to be back at the top where I feel it belongs, you need to pick a style, and unfortunately that means alienating some people. Like Rainbow Six Siege, it's going to alienate some people, isn't it? But they stick with their style because ultimately there are enough people that would trust and like its skill that they will stick with it. The same way if you remove the wall cancel, some would hate it, but more and more people might go, this is pretty good and blah 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 blah. So there it is. Everyone will go in the comments and they'll say the wall cancel's stupid, but they'll say, no wall cancel's stupid, but I'm sticking to my guns. I think that was one of the main reasons the franchise went to shit, was the wall cancel. But it's not just the wall cancel, like I said, it's a ball of string. It's the speed as well. If you want to keep the wall cancel, fair enough, whatever. But you've got to then deal with the speed.
There's a lot, this thing changes a lot of how the game is played. It plays much more deliberately from the stuff that we've done internally, as in you have to be much more careful about when you're using your cover slides and steps, and even your cancels, because it's not just a given anymore that you're just going to be zipping around as fast as possible and you can't be tracked. At that point, it is enough of a change that you have to be a little bit more aware of when to use it, which theoretically opens up that skill gap a little bit more as well.
Yeah, well, and I guess, and then it becomes tricky because then we get into, and this is that catch-22 of then we so to start talking about weapon power. If someone's slower, all of a sudden now, focus fire from Lancers becomes a bigger issue, and then it becomes like this is what we're saying. It's not just one simple change. It is, because then I know that like previous Gears, there were stopping power played a bigger role. Like there's so many variables that are hard to really manage and address inside of this. And I think this is where the test list comes in, is we can pull out those variables and isolate them and see how do they work. Like kind of like what we're doing with the adhesion in conjunction with the active, even though they're 2 different ideas, but we recognize they're also intertwined. And by changing that, it is something that allows us to look at the way it plays.
It does, and like we like up to this point, we've always been relying on our own very robust internal testing as far as the playtest group and the feedback. A lot of really very high skilled ex professionals and all within the mix. And what we get from that group is extremely helpful, but ultimately it is still a very focused group.
It sounds great. Slower movement sounds ideal. And then Dana himself was like, yeah, but if we do this, won't focus fire from lancers become more overpowered? This shows like Dana's thinking about these things, People like think he doesn't think. He is thinking about these things of the knock-on effects, and that makes sense. If you slow the game down, won't focus fire from rifles become more potent because you can't escape it? Yes. But this is what ends up happening in the chat. The entire chat is like, what? Is he saying slower movement? Slow movement? Why is he saying slower movement? There was even somebody, if you scroll back, he literally said, I just want to up-A people and fly at them. And that's the thing, like, that's what you're dealing with, is like, you say slower movement and weaker guns, and everyone just starts losing their mind. So it's really difficult to appease those people. So this is what I'm saying. You have to basically say, listen, this is what we're doing, and it's for the good of the long-term health of the franchise. This is what we're doing. Deal with it. If you don't like it, it's time to leave, because this is where we're taking the franchise. But I feel like TC is so terrified of losing those people, and understandably, because they're their customers, they're so terrified of losing them that they try to appease everybody. You won't. Like, everyone's saying, slow a game? Are you crazy? The game does need slowing down. It does. And there are a load of what I would refer to as absolute trash players in the Twitch chat coming up with these ideas and like freaking out because they can't go on Foundation and hyperbalance in a custom game. The game needs slowing down, and the game needs weaker guns. The time to kill of all the guns is too strong. Like, the devs have a nightmare job because this is what they have to do. Our game's small. In the grand scheme of things, we have a small game. Do we get rid of half our player base and then start building the game from the ground up, or we're kind of floating, we're kind of okay with this player base? Do we just keep it the way it is and then constantly have to deal with these comments? They're just like, if you ever wonder why the game is the way it is just read the Twitch chat. Just read Twitch chat.
Although you did say I should play the shooter controls, and that may help me out. So.
Yeah, shooter controls. One of the things too, which I'm sure this is also some questions that people have asked, but ultimately, one of the things we're also looking at for the shorter term that is related specifically is the idea of opting out of certain functions, certain gameplay functions, and by that I mean like close cover combat, which being able to go into cover, then you press up and you hit X and you try and grab the person, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Being able to turn that off, being able to turn off the ability to accidentally mantle when you don't want to. Those are the things that we can potentially do much quicker that don't solve the bigger problem of I want a dedicated button to do this, or I still want to do this but not this, and how do I do that? This will at least allow people who don't want to accidentally mantle or don't want to accidentally sort of try and do a grab. They can disable that stuff completely, and so they won't be able to do it ever, but they won't accidentally do it anymore either. Right.
Well,
so
you've just negated a bunch of follow-up questions I had around melees and executing and reloads and the chainsaw and all of that aspect.
Well, so that's not negated. I mean, there's a few things in there that are not involved with that. This specifically is about sort of going into cover and accidentally doing things you didn't want to do, and effectively, more often than not, getting killed for it. So that stuff is stuff we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm okay with switching a lot of that stuff off, because initially you think to yourself, well, what happens if I do occasionally want to mantle? Well, the reality of the situation is, if you mantle kick somebody, they 100% of the time have an option to counter, and if they're any good, they will counter you and kill you. So really, there's never ever a reason to mantle kick somebody. The only reason you're mantling kicking somebody is in the hope that they are not good. So I would be in favour of turning off the mantle. I would be in favour of turning off the grab as well, because you can counter the grab. There's, a lot of those things. they barely happen, you know, because I'm on a PC and I don't press those keys. But especially with a controller, like you don't accidentally want to do those things, so it would be a good idea to turn those things off. Like people are saying it's crazy low. I might. All right, can anybody? I'm slouched in my chair at this point. I've been going 2 hours. Can anybody explain to me why the Gib range is too low? What game are you playing? I don't get it. I can blow anybody up that I want. You don't get 85% in this game. The reason you get 85% is because you're not in the Gib range, and the Gib range is enormous. So if you're not in the Gib range, where are you trying to shoot somebody from? You're trying to shoot somebody across Juice Bar to Ticket Bar? Like, it is a massive Gib range. Like, is this an Xbox thing where you're on you're not on a 1 millisecond display, you're on a big old laggy TV or something, and you're shooting where you think you are, but you're not? Like, maybe your display you're playing on is not good enough or something? But I swear, like, the chunk range is redonkulous, bro. What? I feel like I'm losing it, because obviously the more and more you read something, you begin to question yourself. You're like, alright, maybe I've got this wrong. Have I got this wrong? The chunk range is massive, right? People don't sponge on this game. I don't think. Like, you just walk up to them. If they are in Gib range, you click and they die. There's no sponging. There's no, this guy took 25 shots at close, like older games. You just blow them up from a huge range. Like, I don't know what game people are playing. Maybe, like I say, maybe they're on like a big old TV. They push the button, there's input delay. Then on their TV, there's input delay. But obviously the server isn't showing you that input delay. That's just running full speed. And like, you're actually in the wrong position, but your display isn't showing it or something. But like, what? Who wants a bigger Gib range and why? Like, that wouldn't eliminate your problem. Like I would say, you could make the Gib range 500 foot big. Somebody would shoot at 501 foot, and somebody would shoot at 499, and they won't die. Like, my brain explodes when I do these devblogs, because I just look at it and I'm like, yo, I'm just a boomer or something, bro. Like, what is going on?
Okay. Single stick movement. So, before I ask the questions, do you want to talk a little bit about single stick movement? Why was it added? Why is it important?
All right, I'm not going to give any comments. I'm just going to do a comedy anecdote. The comedy anecdote that I read on Twitter was people were sick of single stick movement and people were abusing it, and it shouldn't be in tournament play. And people that play in a tournament should have to show their disability badge, and then they're allowed to play single stick. I kid you not. These are not my words. These are words of a few pros and a few tweets that I was reading, that single stick is so incredibly broken that it should never be allowed to be played. It should be removed from the game. And if you're going into a tournament and you want to enable single stick movement, you should be a disabled person and you should have to show your disability badge, and then you're allowed to play. It was at that moment when I was just like, what game am I playing? I just sat there, I just chuckled to myself at looking at Twitter, and I was just like, what game am I playing? Where is Gears gone? What is happening?
An accessibility feature, and it isn't specifically. It's never was intended to give anybody any able-bodied person an advantage over other able-bodied people. It is simply there to allow people who are not as able to engage with this kind of game and have this kind of experience, to give them the ability to do that. It is extremely important. We've had so many, to this day, I still get a lot of emails and comments about how all of a sudden these changes have allowed them to be able to play with in a franchise they've always wanted to, but never have previously been able to effectively. So just for that reason alone, it is an immense sort of achievement that is there, and we're really happy about that. Now, specifically, I assume you're talking about the fact that a lot of people perceive that it is giving a user an advantage over top of a two-stick person versus a one-stick.
That is my follow-up question.
Yeah, so that we've done exhaustive testing on this recently, and there's no actual mechanical advantage. The difference, the people that some people have started to sort of zero in on in the community from a lot of the posts, are the fact that the way the camera sort of auto leveling functions work in that mode is different from the default, and that is something we will address. And we will address it in such a way where people will be able to opt in or out of it as they want to across all modes, not specifically for one mode over another. So if you're playing with a single stick scheme versus a double stick scheme, or you're playing a shooter, or you're playing a tournament, you'll be able to sort of change the way the camera functions, whether you want to have it zero in auto level, or whether you want it to have it always be focusing. That's certainly the way we're looking at it right now.
And this would mitigate that perceived aspect that there's an advantage.
Exactly. People would be able to specify whatever they want, right? Essentially, what's more comfortable for them. Okay. And if at a sort of competitive level, if people perceive that as being, oh, well, this guy's using it, they are totally getting an advantage, then yeah, you can go do it too and see if you get the advantage. It is purely, it's more often than not, it's just it's a placebo effect.
Right. So now we're gonna have the option. So I'm not fully understanding that, to be clear to you at home. I'm not fully grasping that. I believe he's saying you can do single stick movement and turn it off, like the camera rotation, but that doesn't really solve the problem, because then if you did, quote, want to abuse it for an advantage, you could just leave it on. Nobody's going to stop you. If he's then saying you can turn on auto camera rotation for all the other control schemes, now we're getting into a whole ball game of you wait for it, everybody will have auto rotating cameras. Like, where are we going to draw the line? I think the line needs to be drawn at, listen, there's such a minute group of people that are playing single stick movement to abuse it for a high level piece of play, that you're just going to have to leave it to it. Like, you're just going to have to let them do it and just ban them from a tournament. Because then there's no point playing that way, is there really? But to enable the option for every single camera mode seems a bit crazy. But I don't know. I just think it was a mode that was invented so less able people could enjoy Gears of War, which is fantastic. And a small group of people are apparently abusing it, or blah blah blah. I don't know. I've never played the control scheme. So you will have to let me know if that is a good or bad idea. But the idea of adding auto-rotating cameras to everything seems a bit wacky. So I don't know.
Okay. We've got Vault. That we've talked about, the Vault and the Mantle. We talked about the classic Omen. The other thing that we're getting is just sort of being interspliced throughout the chat here is the 8-shot Gnasher. So initially we put 6 shots into the Gnasher as a way to add skill to the game, right? Like that was the intention.
Yep.
So people had to think not just about blindly firing, but also timing their reloads, thinking about what the other opponent's doing, and really adding that layer of skill to it. That's basically why we did it. Now, what we've heard from people is, I can't clutch up. I miss my shots. I'm in a 1v3, or whatever it is. It becomes a bit of a challenge.
The idea that you can't 1v3 because you've got 6 bullets and not 8 always makes me chuckle, because yes, occasionally it does happen. I will admit it is a bit frustrating, but I quite like the 6-shot Gnasher. I know people in the last Devblog were like, what? If you want to know why I like the 6-shot Gnasher, you can listen to the last Devblog and jump to the timestamp. But like I always say, if you're in a high-level game with decent players, which would actually be happening if the matchmaking worked. So if the matchmaking worked and you were matched against equal level skilled players, you're not going to 1v3 anyway. Because you can't 1v3 in this game due to the nature of rifles and all of the other stuff, that the way the spotting works, all of the mechanics that go into Gears. You're not going to 1v3, not because you haven't got 6 bullets, just because it's not feasible. You might do it 1 in a million. Like, all right, I'm being a bit facetious there, but you know what I mean. If you're against good players, you're not running into 3 people in a 1v3 on Gears 5 and doing a 1v3 anyway. The idea that 6 shots is the reason you're not clutching makes me laugh, because what happens is it seems like everyone in chat is like, oh, I'd always be 1v3 clutching it if I had more bullets. I'm like, bro, you're probably a very, very average Gears of War player, let's be honest, and you're not clutching it anyway. Do you think if you were in a professional environment, or a high-level ranked game, or a regular, let's say, right, you're in a diamond-level ranked game, and you run in 1v3, and your shotgun has 100 bullets in it, not 8, not 6, but 100 in the clip, do you think you're going to 1v3? No. And it's nothing to do with the clip size, it's to do with the game. Like, it cracks me up that people think that somehow, when 8-shot shotgun comes back, if it comes back, that it's going to be the be-all and end-all. Will it help? Yes, absolutely. And it might help in certain situations like 1v2s, I agree. But it's been built up to the point where it's like this, the saviour of the game, and I don't really think it is. It will help, I'm not saying it won't help, and it will be nice, yes, but I don't think it's the be-all and end-all that people are expecting.
So, do you have anything you want to say? What are we thinking? Like how, like, the 8-6 debate becomes eternal.
Well, yeah, at least eternal as far as Gears 5 is concerned.
Well, yeah, eternal. Yeah, exactly. How about just because I live it every day, it feels eternal?
Sure, I understand there is a certain matter of sort of mental stability about this sort of thing as well. But ultimately, I can say, and I will say, I feel like I should be Oprah, whereas like, you get an 8-shot Gnasher, and you get an 8-shot. Yes, you're getting the 8-shot Gnasher. It'll be in Operation 4.
So 8 shots, Operation 4.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So let's just see what happens with the chat. Literally, as we were talking about it, the chat was like, I like 6, I like 6, keep 6. And now we're like, there we go.
Yeah, at this point, you guys have, we've passed the point of no return at this point.
So here we go. Now the happy people are out, and it's like lots of things in there. So this is good. So that's coming Op 4. We are there. And the reason why it has to be an Op 4 is it actually requires a title update.
Yes.
So because it's actually changing the content of the game. There's the indicator of how many shells you have in your Gnasher right now has to change. So this isn't just a CMS change like we would do a client-side change like we can for the weapon tuning or so on and so forth. This actually needs a title update. So
yeah, otherwise it would have been in the dev list. So in this case, no, it has to be with the TU. So
yes. So there we go. So 8 shots. So so that's exciting. And
finally,
and it's, the funny thing is that, we get accused of not listening, and we are hearing and we are listening, but we are also being deliberate about making sure that we're being purposeful about what we're doing. So,
yeah. I mean, the reality is, this comes down to, again, a little of the philosophical aspect of this, but more specifically, you make too many changes at once, and all of a sudden you get all those cascade butterfly effect things going on. When we have to make sure that we are being very careful about that sort of stuff. Now, luckily, going from 6 to 8 shots, other than a content change, is a really trivial thing. And considering that there's such a strong legacy of that being the case in all the previous Gears anyways, we're pretty confident this will be pretty much a no-brainer as far as the effect it's going to have. Things like movement, things like all the little active reload changes, they require a little more specific attention to the overall effect of the entire experience across multiple games. A lot of data has to be captured, that sort of stuff. So this is just we can do this. Let's do it.
So we'll see. I mean, I know, and I know everyone's gonna be like, why did it take so long? All of this, like, I think, I mean,
the answer is simple. I mean, the development answer is we made a choice of how we wanted to try and change the way the Gnasher played and where the skill gap was. And we were very deliberate about that. We were very upfront about that. And ultimately, it didn't turn out the way we had hoped. It did lead us to a better place, I think. I think with the active changes across all the loadout weapons that we've done, the Gnasher is in a better spot from a balance standpoint than it's been in ever, really. And now, it's allowed us to change how we sort of philosophically and literally approach the other two loadout weapons as well. So it's opened the door in a lot of other ways that we're really quite pleased about in general. So
yeah, balanced. Is that something like, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, it is something that we've certainly had a debate back and forth, not just internally, but also with the community as well, as to what, why the perception of the switch from the hard aim feeling what was historically really good versus where it is right now, which feels really, really sort of off. So the simple thing that it comes down to is part of that reaction and cascade effect of movement speed or acceleration changes, where quite simply the fact that we have the magnetism and the hip able to better track than a human can. That's the faster movement within a relatively small sort of area, which means that you're effectively landing more consistently shots from the hip. Versus having to actually aim and stick that crosser on somebody, usually within a few frames of doing the action. This essentially there's less of a narrow margin of error on the hip fire right now versus the nature of the aimed fire. Aimed fire is superior to landing more damage on average at all times. You will get a tighter spread. Just beyond Gib range, you'll get a lot more damage on somebody on average. All those beyond that sort of that range, but ultimately, it's just right now the hip fire is a little too good relative to where the aimed fire is, and people probably remember that we did try and change that, and then everyone said the hip fire was we went too far. So
yeah, we did that last fall. We did it, and everyone said it was almost like instantaneously. Why did you break the Gnasher? Was like my timeline blew up.
Yeah, so we have to be really careful as far as even it's really small change like that. That was less than a 5% change overall on average, and all of a sudden, people felt like they were missing the shots more because they were. They had to aim better essentially when hip fire to land their shots more consistently. And whereas if they wouldn't have to aim, they would have actually had more consistent shots relative to what they were doing at hip fire. So it is a constant struggle with how far we take that. Again, the dev playlist will, and the movement stuff in particular, will help with this. It is every model has the same hitboxes. Every input device uses the same hitboxes. The only difference is, of course, when you're using a mouse, there is no aim assist. So other than a little bit within the hip fire. So it's either that contrast between aim fire and hip fire is much greater when using a mouse, for example.
That's what I'm saying, mate. It takes more skill to shoot a shotgun on PC than controller. Don't at me.
Otherwise, you won't hit any of your shots, as people got to experience a little while ago with the game, versus when you're playing with the mouse, you have no magnetism whatsoever when you're aiming. So you're as good as your actual aim, like straight up. There's no helping whatsoever.
At the same time, Jamie is responsible for a lot of great things that are happening inside of Gears. None of them have to do with character skins. So I'm not going to talk about that right now and address that. So just wanted to kind of put that inside of that. The other one, the Swarm and co-op versus AI, that's something that the team has looked at, but that has been moved. It is a low priority. It is something that is well into the future. It's not going to be happening anytime soon. I know that's something that you guys care about, but it's not that huge on our list right now of what we're looking at. The last thing is the maps question. I see you guys ask about maps. We're not ignoring you on maps. We've talked about maps a lot. Maps take roughly about 6 months to do. We're working on multiple maps at the same time. It's the team has to. We've got level designers designing them. We've got artists ordering them, and there's a process by which it all goes through. We told you, I don't know, 3-4 months ago about our intention to deprioritize tile and reprioritize maps. So more maps are coming. You're going to see, but that is a dividend that is going to pay off over time. That's not just something where we can just be like, Siri, make more maps, and more maps are coming out. So maps are easily, and I'm sure, Jamie, you at least, I know you're not part of the level design team, but you've been around dev long enough. Maps are probably the longest in the cycle of sort of content pieces that take to make.
Yeah, there's a lot of iteration involved, and it gets more complicated as the deeper in the development cycle you go when you are you block something out, and then all of a sudden somebody starts outing it up, and then all of a sudden something gets discovered in a playtest, and that needs to change, and then there's a back and forth between. It can get quite complicated. But I can say that what the guys have been doing with the more freedom and time to be able to do it is so far looking very, very impressive. There's a lot of really good stuff being put together. I know people are going to take that with a grain of salt, but ultimately, there is a lot of really good work that the level design guys are doing.
This is actually just a question for me: is as the gameplay designer, how much impact do you get to have on the map design? Because I know that if we look at a map like Bahanu, which obviously is wide open, people would say.
When he says wide open, I think that's a euphemism for horrendous pile of dog turd. But in all seriousness, Panahu is a poor map, not really because of the map. I quite like the uneven ground and all of that stuff. It's just the weapons that are added onto the map are all long-range rifles, and it's a wide open map, so it kind of compounds the issue of it being rifle centric. I think if they changed the weapons a little bit and added a tiny bit more cover, it would be really, really fine. But it'd be interesting to see how. So there was plenty of good information in that dev blog, answered a lot of questions. Obviously some didn't get answered, some didn't. That's just the nature of a timed based thing. I think Jamie answered some really good questions and gave some really good points. It's so much better to hear a developer on the stream, because obviously they have so much more information than someone else. So if they could get a developer on, even if it's PvP, PvE, art, design, lore, I think any developer or any insight into the studio is obviously a great thing for people, because they just feel more connected to the franchise. They feel like they've been listened to, and obviously they can give more information than a regular person can, because they're involved in the game. So yeah, I thought that was a really good dev blog. If you enjoyed the video, you can like, comment, subscribe for all of the work I put in. Hopefully my videos don't go dark for 90 days and I can actually upload. If I can't, check me out on Twitch. There are all the links in the description, like Discord, Twitter, so places to get involved. You can support, because 27p a video isn't the greatest. So if you want to become a member, you can hit the join button. You get badges and you get priority responses to your comments and feedback, and also member specific only videos and polls. There's subscriber Discord. Anybody can join the Discord, but if you're a subscriber, there are certain sections that are sub only where you can chat amongst yourself, give me some feedback on the the videos I've been making and stuff like that. So check out all the links in the description. There are Twitch primes. If you want to become a Twitch sub, you get badges, sub invites, etc. So there's plenty of perks if you do want to support and you do enjoy the content. Thanks very much for tuning in.